We're well into spring and life's good. But I don't know if you've noticed, around this time every year, a little animal creeps out. They're called naysayers. And they find all the bad things that are going on in the world rather than seeing all the good things, rather than being grateful. Interestingly, in the 40-something years I've been investing, the naysayers always come out. And interestingly, they've always been wrong. So in today's episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, I'm going to explain to you why these are the good times, why these are the times you should be enjoying and appreciating. I'm then going to have a chat with my business partner, Brett Warren, Director of Metropole in Brisbane, about why he left $50,000 on the table, not going ahead doing a property deal. Some great information there and a lesson in my mindset moment that I think is going to help excite you, stimulate you, influence you to go for some great things. At the end of today's show, I hope you're going to be a bit further in your path to being more financially successful and a better property investor. So thanks for joining me for this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's most trusted property commentator who has once again been voted Australia's leading property investment advisor. That's the 5th time he's won a similar award in the last 7 years.
If we were to judge whether the current times are good times to be alive, a good time in the history of the world, many people would probably think not, wouldn't they? They'd be saying that they're continuously getting the bad news in the 24/7 news cycle and all the gloom and doom that it portrays. We're getting monthly statistics seesawing from good to bad. The property slump is over. No, it's not. The economy's heading to recession. No, it's not. There's problems overseas. They will affect us here. Maybe they won't. Then there's the stories about high cost of living, the ever-increasing pressure on the environment, the fact that the property market's unaffordable for many. Think about it. These are enough to get anyone down. It's just too easy to buy into the doom and gloom hype that's so prevalent in the mainstream media these days. So it's no wonder that more and more people are pining for the good old days, for an easy life. But what if I told you that you won the lottery? And right now, you're living in the best country in the world at the best time in human history. If only we could stop complaining long enough to realise it. Thanks to the inventions of the internet, we've got access to a whole world of possibilities our parents and our grandparents could never have dreamed of. To be honest, I wouldn't have dreamed of them. I remember when my friend Jeff was the first person I ever knew in the late 1980s to be connected to the internet. What was this thing? I had a computer, but to actually be connected to the internet and then sending an email was a new thing. Then now, today, you can have a video chat with a friend across the road or around the world. You can work from home. You can go get qualifications from a prestigious university without leaving your couch. Not to mention the seemingly limitless news and entertainment that you got right at your fingertips. Of course, over the time, international travel has changed. Since I first started travelling, it's never been cheaper. And platforms such as Airbnb enable us not only to jet set on a budget. Hey, is that a word people still use? I don't know where that one came from, but it's the word that I remember my mum used to use. So you can jet set on a budget with Airbnb. Or you can make some cash on the side when your home's empty. I remember in the past, dining out was a rare treat reserved for birthdays and anniversaries. Today, most of us can afford to eat out at restaurants or buy takeaway food on a regular basis, even if we don't have a huge income. And if we can't be bothered going out, we can have the finest cuisine we like brought to our home. Just open your phone, use Uber Eats. So what's wrong with this picture? Unfortunately, human nature is such that with all these advances, all these improvements, we can't help but want more and more and more. The house, the cars, the holidays, the double shot macchiato, and dare I mention, the controversial smashed avo on sourdough toast. Thanks for that one, Bernard Salt. See, we want everything and we want it yesterday. And this mentality leaves us wide open to the relentless pursuit of keeping up with the Joneses. But none of this is real. Real happiness, real financial security can't be found at the bottom of an award-winning bottle of wine in a fancy restaurant. It's going through hard work, discipline, and maintaining your priorities. Spend a little here, save a little there, until you reach a point where you're no longer dependent on your weekly wage. You don't need it to make ends meet anymore. But until that time, you're never really, truly free, because you're always at the mercy of your creditors, the government, the boss, the economy, life. Now, another reason that people are finding it hard to recognise that we are currently in the best time ever is because we're hardwired to be negative. Fact is, human beings are biologically predisposed towards negative thinking. Now, this negative thinking is well studied, but the implications affect nearly all areas of our life. Our tendency is to pay more attention to bad things and overlook the good things. But this was likely to have resulted from evolution, because early in human history, paying attention to the bad, to the dangerous, to the negative threats in the world were likely a matter of life and death. So if the rustle in the bush was a saber-toothed tiger and you only thought it was just the wind blowing, you could get yourself into trouble and die. So it was much safer to think rustles were saber-toothed tigers than they were just the wind blowing. So those people who were more attuned to danger, who paid more attention to the bad things around them, were more likely to survive. This meant they're also more likely to hand down their genes that made them more attentive to danger. While we may no longer need this constant high alert that our early ancestors needed to stay alive, the negativity bias still has a starring role in the way our brains operate. Research has shown this negativity bias can have a wide variety of effects on how you think, how you respond, how you feel. Some of the everyday areas where you may feel the result of this bias includes in your relationships, in your decision making, and the way you perceive people, and the way you perceive the news, and you always see the negative rather than the good things that are there. So obviously the next natural question is, how do you overcome this tendency towards negativity? Because we're hardwired to respond to fear to any potential negative outcome, we often seem to feel inundated by anxiety, especially in this age of the internet and information overload where you just keep getting the news over and over again. Understanding your biases is the first step to overcoming them. In fact, how to overcome negativity biases is a whole different topic, but let me give you a hint. It starts with an attitude of gratitude. That goes a long way to appreciating how good your life really is. It's something I've done every day for years. When I wake up before I get out of bed, I've got to remind myself of 4 things I'm grateful for, and they're different from the ones yesterday. Because over the years, I've recognised that mindset is everything. Take a look at some of the most successful people on the planet, and it'll quickly reveal that mindset is everything. Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg's wardrobe is made up entirely of, well, almost entirely of jeans, hoodies and T-shirts, while Warren Buffett lives in the house he bought way back in 1958 for $31,000. So becoming financially free isn't necessarily about having the best of everything. It's about making sacrifices in some areas so you're able to splurge on things that really matter to you. So instead of buying the latest gadget, the latest iPhone, the latest, greatest car or clothes or whatever to fit in with the consumerism society, why not try running your own race? Now, I see this daily when people in my office go downstairs to the restaurant and spend $4.50 on a cafe, on a latte, on a cappuccino, when in the office we've got a great Nespresso machine for free. Why don't you consider taking some coffee from home and funnel that extra $5, $10 a day into paying off some of your debts so you can be debt-free sooner? Postpone upgrading your car so you can afford to take some time off to volunteer at your kid's school. Now, that'll make a priceless memory. Maybe you don't need to keep adding to your wardrobe. Free up some of that valuable cash and, over time, put it into something that grows in value, like an investment property. Now, of course, doing these things once or twice isn't going to make a dent. But adopt them as lifelong habits and you're going to be amazed at what a difference they can make. It's called delayed gratification. Then follow these 3 simple steps to financial freedom. Number 1, spend less than you earn. Because if you don't, you're always going to be paying somebody you're always going to owe people. Number 2, save and invest wisely in income-producing growth assets like residential real estate. And number 3, reinvest your money using compounding leverage and growth to keep growing your asset base until you've got your own cash machine. Sounds simple, but don't underestimate the importance of this simple message. Keep your eye on the prize. Keep your eye on the big picture, the long-term goals, the things you want to achieve. It could be a private school for your kids. It could be an early retirement for you. Maybe a sea change to a less complicated life. Every little step you take towards your dream is progress, even if it doesn't seem that way in the short term. But then one day you're going to wake up and realise you've made it. And it'll be totally worth it. In a moment, I'm going to have a chat with Brett Warren, and he'll explain why he didn't go ahead with the deal and left $50,000 on the table. There should be some great insights in that. And in my mindset moment, I'm going to tell you what to say to those people who say it can't be done. But you're probably listening to this podcast because you're interested in property. And with our property markets moving forward, you're probably also getting mixed messages and wondering what you should do, what you can do to outperform the markets over the long term without taking the risks that other investors face. Because we know most investors never get past their first property. And I think to achieve financial freedom in this new environment, you're going to need much more than just a buyer's agency. You're going to need much more than just a property strategist. You're going to need an advisor who takes a holistic view on your wealth creation. And that's exactly what you get from the multi-award-winning team at Metropole, my team. Because our team doesn't sell properties, which means we can give you independent advice. But our service includes strategic property advice. We put property plans together. We give you a finance strategy. Ken Race gives you a wealth creation strategy, a wealth tax strategy. Of course, we have buyers agencies that will help our clients buy investments or their homes, but that's only after we've done the big picture planning in advance. We've got wealth advisory, financial planning, property management, renovations and property development, ongoing portfolio review. So we provide a full range of services. You can choose to use one or all of our services. How much would it be worth you if you could get the best team on your side, one that'll customise a solution to your specific needs? So why not have a chat with my team at Metropole? Go to metropole.com.au, leave your details, and we'd be happy to have an obligation-free chat with you and see how we can help you take advantage of the current property markets. Metropole.com.au. Now's the time for you to take action to ride the next property wave.
Now here's Michael's mindset message. Remember, a change in your thinking will lead to a change in your life.
In my mindset moment today, I'd like to address those times when people tell you, you can't do that, this can't be done. A lot of people are going to tell you that along your life. They're going to say you don't have the grit. They're going to say what you're going to try and do is too risky. Or maybe you don't have the skills. Maybe you don't have the experience. Some will tell you, oh, that's already been done. Somebody else is doing it who's better than you, so don't try it. People are always going to find reasons for you not to do things. But the truth is, these people are just talking to themselves. They're just telling you about their own excuses as to why they didn't do it. They're telling you about all the things that held them back, about all of the things that are still holding them back today. So my message to you today is, don't base your decisions on the advice of those who haven't had to deal with the results. You only need one thing to succeed. Forget all the reasons why it won't work and believe in the one reason why it will. Not starting is worse than starting and failing. So don't worry about failure. You only have to be right once. As you've often heard me say, I'm a real success at failure. I've failed many, many times in all areas of my life, but I've got one more time and I've done it again. So when people tell you, you can't do that, you can't achieve that, you're not smart enough, remember, they're not talking to you. They're talking to themselves. Don't pay any attention and go ahead and do it. If you're like me, you're probably on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and you hear comments about how people have done good deals. And I'm in a couple of Facebook groups where people post questions, ask, should I buy this? What is your advice? And I sometimes chuckle at the advice I hear people give because, well, they're obviously genuinely trying to help. They're people without the perspective and enthusiastic amateurs. You've got to be careful who you ask. But recently, I read a blog from my business partner, Brett Warren, Director of Metropole Properties in Brisbane, who writes a regular blog every week on Property Update and does some great videos. And we sort of play around on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram together and talk a little bit together on that. And he talked about a deal where somebody thought they could make $50,000 pretty easily. He had some very firm views on this. So let's ask him about it. Welcome, Brett.
Hi, Michael. Good to be with you.
Now, Brett, tell us a bit about this. What was going on?
Absolutely. So, yeah, as you said, Michael, there's people asking for advice and, people responding. And this particular person was looking at a property that he could buy in a low socioeconomic area under market value. He was able to perform a quick renovation on it and make a quick $50,000 profit. And he was asking if it was a good idea. And obviously, who would say no to $50,000, Michael?
Probably you.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone else seemed to be quite positive, but as we always see, there's really only one side of the story with these kinds of questions and problems. And from my point of view, there's a really big side of the story that was missed. And look, he's suggesting that it could make $50,000 quite easy if everything goes right. But there's also certain risks involved in that, Michael, and that's probably what I wanted to point out to the person asking.
Well, the problem is they get these emails that you and I get in our inbox as well. And currently, as the property market has moved on, there's a whole new wave of property spruikers out there selling courses, telling people that they can make quick money, quick bucks, instant turnover, get rich quick, which you and I have been in property long enough to know that doesn't work. But you can understand why inexperienced investors would get, excuse the expression, sucked in by this. Anyway, tell us more about the story.
Yeah, so look, there's a big upside there, Michael, and as you said, it's the hook. They're getting lured in. But I just pointed out the risks, and in these kinds of environments, and economically speaking, and locations, I think there's significant risks. At the moment, we're in an environment where there's very, very low inflation and very low wages growth. At some stage, interest rates will rise. There may even be some kind of economic hiccup in the future as well. So these aren't really the areas you want to be testing the waters in if you're a rookie investor. He's assuming that it's going to go to plan, that we're going to get it at the right price. You and I both know, Michael, when we renovate, that there's always hiccups along the way, especially if you haven't done it before and you're taking down walls and there may be structural issues. So he's assuming that will go to plan as well, and also assuming that all the valuations will stack up as well. And I think there's a lot of assumptions being made when there's just too much risk for me in this particular instance.
Well, a lot of people hear things, read things, go to courses that tell them if you spend $1 on a renovation, you'll get $1 back. I know you and I have been working together for over a decade, and hundreds of our clients have had renovations done. And it doesn't work that way. If you do structural renovations where there's major works, adding a bathroom, adding an ensuite, adding a bedroom, you can get significant profits, but that's actually not a renovation. That involves development approvals, council approvals, plans and permits, takes a lot longer, and there's often hidden costs. And yes, you can, if you go to the trouble and let's say risk of that, you can make money. But if you're going to do new kitchens and bathrooms and new carpets and a coat of paint, as a lot of these weekend development courses tell you about, you're probably only making $1.20, $1.30 for every dollar you put in. Sure, you're getting better rent. Sure, you're getting a wider range of tenants. It's a great way to end up with good investment properties to keep, but there's not enough margin to flip it, especially when you take into account the holding costs, the selling costs, the stamp duty and the GST. They don't realise that, Brett.
No, they don't. There's very little probably gain at the end of the day once he does that. And if you're stuck with a property in one of those locations and there's a downturn or some kind of incident, then you're stuck with an asset that's not going to perform, and you could potentially lose, in these cases, 20 to 30% of your money, because these are the areas where there's affordability issues and low socioeconomic and low wages growth. And that rings alarm bells for me straight away.
Well, that's the other part of the argument. Forget the strategy, because flipping flops. It's not like the block. It doesn't work that way. But the other thing is choosing the location, because you have to have a fallback strategy. What if you can't sell? Can you hold it? Can you keep the property in the long term? Would you keep the property in the long term? Because we know that location does 80% of the heavy lifting. And as you were suggesting, this particular case was in a lower socioeconomic area, and he thought he could also buy below market value. Well, why? Why would he be able to buy below market value? Why hasn't somebody else paid for it? But these aren't the suburbs that are going to outperform in the long term, Brett.
No, they're not. They don't have the wages growth. They don't have the jobs being produced and the higher incomes and multiple income streams. There's not the good school catchments. There's not public transport. There's not all those kind of fundamentals we look for. And if there was a crisis, as I said before, the areas that are in high demand, you can ride out a year. You know, you might lose 4 or 5% in a year, but 12 months later, you're generally back to where you are because people aren't selling. And if you're looking to renovate or develop and you need to hold off for a year, that's not an issue if you're in a good location. But a year later, if you're down 20 or 30%, then that could become a significant issue. And I don't think the poster was taking that into consideration.
Well, the other thing is these areas are the areas of lower wages growth. So again, it's not a judge of people. And unfortunately, some people are more successful at their jobs, their careers have higher incomes and others don't. But I see moving forward, there's going to be some changes in the job structure in Australia. More jobs are being taken over by artificial intelligence, others are going offshore. And so a lot of the manual jobs, a lot of the manufacturing jobs, a lot of the blue collar jobs are not going to have much wages growth. And that means the families living in those areas are not going to be able to afford a lot more, or new people aren't going to be able to afford more to buy into those areas. And the outer suburbs tend to have another estate and another estate, so that there's no shortage of supply, there's no scarcity, there's no strong owner-occupier appeal. They're not aspirational or gentrifying suburbs. Why fight the big trends, Brett?
Look, that's right, Michael. If we make it very simple, property or anything goes up because of supply and demand. And as you pointed out there, if there's another 10 years of supply of land in this kind of an area, there's just no scarcity and no level to drive up incomes. There's no good school catchments or lifestyle precincts to draw people to the area. In Brisbane, I think we've been quite lucky. Our roads aren't as clogged as Sydney or Melbourne because we've been quite proactive with tunnels. But in the next 10 years, we're getting another 500,000 cars on the road. So a 30 or 40-minute commute now will quite easily turn into an hour plus very, very quickly. And we want to be in these kinds of locations where there's stronger demand.
So if this poster on social media would have listened to your advice, what would you have told him? How could he reduce his risk?
Look, he could have reduced his risk by putting his money in an area that is a lower risk area and is much safer. And look, if there is a downturn, there's a quicker recovery. And on the other side of the equation, there's higher wages growth, there's higher demand because of jobs and schools and infrastructure and things like that. And his money will work harder for him in that type of location. Sure, he may not get the $50,000 initial hit, but in a 10 or 15-year period, we could be talking probably 10 times that amount if he gets it right.
Well, that's a really good point, because if you're a property investor and you're not selling, down the track, 10, 15, 20 years' time, most of your assets, most of what you own isn't going to be the rent you earn. It's not going to be the one-off bonus of buying it a bit cheaper. It's not going to be the rent or the tax savings you've had. It's really going to be the untaxed capital growth that has compounded. And so therefore, that's what an investor should look for to start with, the strong capital growth, which, by the way, is going to lead to increased rental growth also, because as the value of the properties goes up, so does, in the right sort of proportion, the rents as well. So what sort of areas, we've discussed it in previous podcasts, Brett, but just a quick rundown, what sort of areas would you be looking for?
Well, it's the same in Brisbane as is in Sydney and Melbourne. And in Brisbane at the moment, all our jobs are being created within that 5 to 0 kilometre ring from the CBD, with the airport, the infrastructure projects, the Cross River Rail, the Queen's Wharf project. There's thousands of jobs being created there, and more than anywhere else in Queensland. And I'd suggest that's why Sydney and Melbourne have performed extremely well in the last couple of decades because they've had the jobs and people moving for those jobs. Brisbane haven't had that, but look, there's good signs on the horizon and things are starting to turn around. So I'd be wanting to put my money to work in an area where it's going to perform significantly better. I wouldn't be focusing on short-term profits or upside, but rather than longer-term wealth over the longer term.
So areas where the demographic have got higher disposable income, multiple sources of income, who want to live there, because we were talking about the outer suburbs. The rich don't commute, and they're not going to commute. And unfortunately, the lower socioeconomic groups are being pushed out further and further. So I agree with your strategy, and I commend you for your tenacity and your patience to answer a lot of these questions from people on the social media forums. I know you love answering questions for our clients at Metropole. So if people want to have a chat with you, they can contact you at 1300-METROPOLE or go to metropole.com.au, and you're the director of our Brisbane office. And while you see people from Brisbane, I know you see a lot of clients virtually through Skype and programs like that, who are interstate as well. And I also know that you don't specifically say Brisbane, do you?
No, look, and that's important. I think a lot of people and a lot of professionals may be a bit hamstrung by what they can recommend. We're a national company, so we only invest in areas where our clients' best interests are. And Brisbane, while Brisbane's good at the moment, there may be clients or people that have assets in Brisbane, so it may not make sense to buy more in Brisbane. And conversely, in the other locations, we like to diversify and spread into the better capital cities and bigger areas.
So if people contact you, Brett, what's the next stage? What do you do?
Well, look, it's not always about the property, Michael, so we're not going to rush out and offer them a property. We actually have no properties to sell. So we like to take a step back, and it's almost like starting a business. You know, you take a step back, you get your strong platform set up. We could look at what their goals are, what they're trying to achieve. There's a great strategic plan service that we can advise people and use data and information for them to make the decisions visible for them. And a lot of our analytical clients like that. And only then we can start understanding the location and where they should be buying.
So it's working out where you want to be, bringing your future to the present and planning, and then giving you a plan to get to the future. Because if you don't have a plan, you'll be part of somebody else's. So 1300-METROPOLE, the link will be in the show note. Go to metropole.com.au. Thanks for your time, Brett.
Thanks, Michael.
Well, we had a bit of variety in today's show, didn't we? And if you got some benefit from it, I'd like you to help me on my quest to make more of us financially independent by being more financially literate. So please share this episode with somebody. Tell somebody about it, or just click the share button on the podcast app that you're listening to this with. They all have a share button of some sort there. And if you want to tell the world about what you think about it, why not leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast? Because when you do, if I read it out like I'm about to for Jones Boys, I'm going to gift you one of my books. All you have to do is email me, michael@metropole.com.au, and when you've heard the review, send me the email and I'll give you a gift. In the meantime, a 5-star review from Jones Boys saying, brilliant podcast, a simple narrative which is both easy to relate to and understand, no matter the level of comprehension of wealth creation. The blending of both the strategic elements for compiling a portfolio and the motivational techniques offers the listener an alternative to the standard wake up and invest rules. Well, thank you so much for those great words. I look forward to being with you again. You know that this show comes to you twice a week, but in between you can always subscribe to my property update newsletter. It's a daily newsletter with 8 articles coming out each day from a wide range of experts, or of course my YouTube channel and Instagram. I've recently gotten onto Instagram. I'm having a lot of fun on Instagram. So if you're on Instagram, go look for Michael Yardney on Instagram, and I'd love to keep in contact with you. In the meantime, catch up with you real soon for the next show. Have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favorite Android app as the Michael Yardney podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?